Hello everyone and welcome back to another Black Desert video. So today I want to talk about amplifying artifacts. Now, a lot of you guys are either in the mid game or going into the end game. So whether you got your Herald crystals from pre-ordering on the market or you grinded them out, I kind of wanted to talk about which ones you should go for first, just because I think some are more important than others for various different things. So I wanted to talk about my experience, what I went through, and especially for the people who can't grind Adonia spots and all you could do is put an order on it. Let's talk about that. So these are the artifacts that I use. I've talked about this in another video, and you could watch the full detail and breakdown of everything I use. But basically, when it comes to PvE, there are about 3 different sets that you can use, like artifacts and Lightstone combos that are more for endgame players. Now, it's target openings, vicious shadows, and species damage. This one in particular, depending on where you're grinding more specifically. But I think of the two, vicious shadows, target opening are probably the 2 main choices that a lot of endgame players use. And I wanted to talk about which ones is probably worth amplifying more than the others. Now, I have both of them. I'm able to grind, all the Adonia spots, so I just got them over time. But I wanted to show you guys, and I think in the next month or 2, they might start sitting on the market, just because I think a lot of the endgame players are close to finishing up, if not already finishing up their end times, which allows you to amplify all of this stuff. So yeah, anyway, looking at all these artifacts, you require 1 strike, rage, marked, and lungs for target openings. I think if you're using this one, the only one really worth doing is probably the AP and the crit damage. The stamina and accuracy are nice, but it's a little bit easier to actually finish the relevant ones you need for this one. So like if you're going target openings, you really only need 2 out of 4, or a 60, I guess 30 end times, multiply that by as many artifacts as you need. So 2 of them is a little bit cheaper of a combo, and strikes are actually going down in price these days. Remember when they were 5 bill and on order? Now I believe strike crystals, at least here on NA, are under 1 billion silver now, at least the last time I looked at it, which is kind of crazy. So next one we have is Vicious Shadows. In my opinion, this is the more popular one that most people use because it's more damage output across the board over target openings. So I talked about this a while ago. I was like, if you can only get target openings or Vicious Shadows, I think Vicious Shadows for most people, no matter what class you play, is the overall better choice. This one is actually a little bit more expensive in my opinion, because literally all of the crystal or Lightstones that you need in here are important. So you're going to need literally both AP increase and then the crit damage and the back attack. So you're going to need like 4 out of 4, which is 120. And that's a little bit harder to gain, whether you're buying it or grinding it out. So yeah, Vicious Shadows, obviously the better choice, but ultimately it requires you to spend a little bit more silver and everything, grind a little bit more, and that's why I think that target openings only needing 2 out of 4 is a good entry level point, and then ideally the goal is to get all of them, but it takes time to do that. So just know that Vicious Shadows, you're going to need 4 out of 4 amplified. And obviously, depends on where you're grinding. Always do this special attack damage. So that's like crit, back, air, down, all those special attacks over damage first. So in priority, probably crit damage, highest priority, then back, and then straight up AP. So next, we have species damage. Now, I have Adonia, but for all of you guys, if you're grinding like demi-human spots, like Ulakita areas, or down in Kama Sylvia for Kama Sylvians, those are the popular ones. It's always 3 of the species damage and iridescent for whatever you're doing, right? So this one, it really just depends on what you're grinding. And luckily, you only need to grind out 3 out of 4 of the amplified things, and it's slightly cheaper. So in my opinion, if you are under the cap of the spot that pushes you higher, species is always better, but once you're over the cap, then special attack is the best way to go. So covering the 3 PvE ones, I think Vicious Shadows obviously is going to be the highest damage output, but it also requires you to amplify all 4 of them total for the maximum. And then target openings being the cheapest one, because you only need 2 of the relevant ones, AP and crit damage. I think this is the good entry level choice for most people, just because strikes are pretty cheap and the other ones are, you know, probably min price these days. So yeah, I think if you're newer to the game, or you know, you just have like not 120 end times, this is probably fine, but ultimately you want to get them all eventually. And then species damage, I believe they're all the same. So they go, default is +5, then you need 3 of them, and then they go +2 per upgrade to amplified. So you're getting like, instead of 30, going up to 36. So it's nice to have, but in terms of species damage, it's kind of lowest on the priority list, depending on where you're grinding, just because I feel like it gives like the least value. Like I would rather go one of the other 2 instead, but ultimately it really just depends. And in terms of PvP, if you are a PvPer, I assume this is what most people run these days. Straight human damage, or I guess damage to adventurers as they call it nowadays. It doesn't matter if it's only +2, because +2 in PvP is different. So yeah, same thing. I guess if you're using it for human damage type PvE, it's kind of less relevant as well. But you're using this one for your PvP with the new artifacts that you upgrade as well, which is kind of nice. I actually kind of upgraded this one for the memes. It's my full-on defense iron wall. So basically I amplified it. It goes from +3, I believe, to +5. And so that's like 38 extra. It goes from like what? 30 to 38 DR, which actually, even as a Dark Knight, you know, the glass cannon class of the game, I actually feel significantly tankier with the upgrade. And especially if you're doing the Dekia artifacts, I'm still more or less grinding out the Herald's artifact ones, but the Lightstones are, you know, higher priority. So yeah, for all of you who are thinking about doing the full-on rock build, as they call it, you know how if you ever do like RBF or anything, or capped wars, and people are just straight tanky and like they do no damage, but they take no damage, chances are this is what they're using with the upgraded and like the 6 Jin blue ones. So that's essentially what the build is. I actually just got this one more or less to test it, so I haven't upgraded them yet. And that one is straight evasion. Just got them while they were available. I think the hybrid one that I've seen, where it's like 2 iron walls and then 2 waves, like the DR evasion hybrid, is probably, you know, an overall better choice. But again, evasion in this stage of the game, current meta, is not that great. But you never know in the future, so you might as well just like think about it. Luckily, we are not at the point where we have to, or we can't even upgrade Lightstones for life skillers yet. Maybe in the future that would be nice, but right now we can't do that, so we're just gonna skip it. Other ones that I think are important, if you are going for the straight up combat XP, I'm working on this one next. Is probably, it just gives you another 100%. So like it goes from 25 to 50% combat XP per amplified. So I think it'll help people play seasonals or like level up faster in seasonals, which is always nice. 100%. Keep in mind, all combat and skill XP is additive, not multiplicative. So like right now, if I were to use it, it gives me 400%. And with this one, it's 500%. It's not like a multiplier scale or anything. So like, is it a big deal? No, not really. But it's one of those things was like, once you have everything else, like the important PvE stuff done, then this is when you would get your, you know, the extra combat XP. For dosas and people who actually need crit damage, or not crit damage, crit rate, I think Death Blow is a good option to use. You could just move up your blade crystals or lightstones from 2 to, I believe, 3. Hold on, let me see. Let me just look that up. Oh god. Amplified blade. Yeah, so this one goes from 2 to 3 crit rate percent. I believe that's actually a good choice because crit rate isn't exactly the easiest thing to come by. So alternative things you could do if you do amplify it is you could probably replace one of the crit rate crystals in your art or like reforge, and probably replace that with anything else. So that could be an alternative. So that's an option if you're using the Deathblow set. I think Deathblow is very specific to like certain dosas and or people who are on a budget, like actual new players, because all these crystals and lightstones, I guess I should keep saying crystals, all these lightstones are relatively cheap nowadays compared to like species damage in Adania and everything. So yeah, if you're a new player, crit rate would probably help you out a lot, and I don't think it's a bad one. It's just not best in slot. And then remember the good old all-out attack. Yeah, I think all of these you're gonna need 4 out of 4 on this one as well, because it requires double strikes, which is an additional percentage of crit damage, which is actually huge. And then if you have all amplifieds with all out attack, I think this is probably the highest output. However, the reason why you don't really see a lot of people using this, like the end game players in Adania, is because the -15 DR and -25 evasion. Yeah, that actually hurts. And I've seen people who are way more geared than I am, like they take chunks of damage in Adania spots. So yeah, that -15 DR, like you could do it, but it's not really safe to the point where if you're grinding anything but Adania, all out attack is great. And sometimes most people do not lock in 100% when they're grinding. So you're probably like watching a stream on the side, watching a movie, TV or something, literally doing something else. So yeah, all out attack is actually very good, just maybe not for high-end Adania grinding. So that's what I do in my opinion. But yeah, all out attack is a good option. And these are the 3 that are very situational that I use. But for your average person, Vicious Shadow is probably going to be the best overall, highest and most cost, for amplifying everything. But aside from that, target openings, you only need 2 out of 4, so I think that's a very good beginner option as well. Well, I say beginner, but I mean it's like the damage difference between Vicious Shadows and target opening. If you're not locked in, then it's like slightly under it, but it's not as expensive, and depending on your grind. So like let's say you're doing a group spot or like Dekia Olins, for example, I think target openings is slightly better in Olins because the golems, it really just depends on where you're positioning everything, and there's a lot of things coming out at random spots, and then they kind of have to group to you. So overall, I've been doing testings between target opening and Vicious Shadows in various spots, but I think for I would say 7 out of 10 spots, Vicious Shadows will be better, and I would recommend most people to get that one just because it's overall higher damage output. But ultimately, one of these 3 that you can pick, species, Vicious Shadows, target opening, is always good. PvPers, you use the different crystals with straight defense with damage, human adventure damage. And then aside from that, alternative beginner or a specialized usage or death blow, all out attack. And if you grind with you're trying to push for like 66 or 67, some people just use this one. So anyway, with that said, that's what I wanted to talk about. Are they ever going to make you or allow you to amplify, life skill crystals? Probably in the future, but I'm glad it's not now because we all have a lot of other things to work on. So anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about. Thanks so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I just want to say thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for future videos. I'll see you later. Peace.